Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My small contribution this morning is to give a very brief outline of emergency response communication in the event of a nuclear accident. Not saying there is one, but what would happen if something happened, I will focus on what they plan to do or what they're doing in China. And Mr. Wong of the Security Bureau will focus on the emergency action planning for Hong Kong. In terms of nuclear safety, the slide you see here reflects China's current organization setup, current organization structure in dealing with nuclear safety issue. I think the first point you have to remember is nuclear safety is not a Daya Bay or local issue. It's a state issue. It's a national issue. Involve many parties across the country. Of course, you have the operator, and then the operator will be supervised by the State Nuclear Safety Bureau, 國家核安全局, which is part and parcel of the Environmental Protection Ministry in China. An integrated system, which in a way has some merit as compared with the US system or Canadian system and so on. Anyway, so the State Nuclear Safety Bureau, upon being satisfied with the nuclear safety provision of a nuclear power plant, would issue an operating license and supervise the operation of the nuclear power plant. But when it comes to emergency response, there is a national or the central government level type of committee called State Emergency Response Committee for Nuclear Incident that has the authority to mobilize the military, the police, and all the ministry involved, and all the local governments. Of course, the technical support units or the research units would also be putting support to all these organizations. Now, in the event of an emergency, then as I reported earlier, we have this State Emergency Response Coordination Committee, but of course you don't just rely on a committee that doesn't meet every day. The committee actually is supported by a State Emergency Response Command Center, which is kind of a action-driven type of a organization under the committee. So that particular response command center would issue order to Guangdong, and Guangdong also has an emergency response headquarters, for nuclear incident that would quickly provide information to the Security Bureau of Hong Kong and of course the other municipalities near the nuclear power plant as well, including Shenzhen, Huizhou, and the military units, and of course the police, the fire and health department, and quickly mobilizing them. The command center, of course, would also communicate directly with the owner of the nuclear power plant, the China Guangdong Nuclear Power Corporation that owns the Daya Bay nuclear power plant. That's half of the story. On the other side, the statewide emergency response coordination unit would also mobilize the other ministry, mobilize the Ministry of Environmental Protection, that includes the State Nuclear Safety, and of course they would also quickly mobilize the technical support unit. Now, going back to that mobilizing military, you probably recall 3 years ago we had this big earthquake in Sichuan, and within matters of hours you see all kind of military and police unit all over the place in the earthquake damaged zone. So that's the way China mobilizes military. Of course, under nuclear accident condition, radiation protection and all these things would have to come into play. But basically, they quickly turned that into a national issue, national safety issue, quickly mobilized the military, and so on, whether it's a natural disaster or nuclear disaster. All right. Now, in terms of the emergency response zoning, there is a piece of regulation called GBT 17680 that specify that in the event of a nuclear accident, then within 5 kilometers, that will be the evacuation zone. Within 10 kilometers, that's considered to be the plume emergency response zone. And within 50 kilometers, that's the ingestion zone. Now, how would that relate back to Hong Kong? In the vicinity of the Daya nuclear plant in Lingao, of course, the 5 kilometers, the evacuation, the 10 kilometers, the outer plume emergency response zone, and the evacuation routes and all these things have to be clearly defined. In terms of potential impact in Hong Kong, actually the closest we get to the Daya nuclear plant is of course Pingzhou, 13 kilometers away, and then there's Sa Tau Kok, 33 kilometers away. The border of Hong Kong is 45 kilometers away plus. So how does that put Hong Kong, into the picture? In terms of the current emergency response plan, there is no need for evacuation or no anticipated need for evacuation. But then, because Hong Kong will be very much in the, the so-called ingestion zone in terms of food and drinking water, so the safety of food and drinking water supply would need to be closely monitored. I believe Mr. Wong of the Security Bureau would give a lot of more detail in terms of Hong Kong's response. I should close off by saying in the last 2-3 months, as a result of Fukushima, the State Nuclear Safety Bureau initiated a very comprehensive and vigorous safety check, nuclear safety check on all the existing plants and all the ongoing projects. Those projects that have not been approved, of course, will be sort of held up. And why is it being held up? They are in the process of re-examining the safety provision, the requirement. In all likelihood, based on discussion in the last couple of months, some of the safety requirements will be escalated. For example, we have to address the issue of simultaneous natural disaster. For example, the plant is designed to withstand earthquake. How about earthquake come along together with a bad flood? It may not be a tsunami, but in this part of the world, we do have heavy rainfall that could lead to the flood. How do you deal with simultaneous type of, what kind of a backup system, what kind of a redundancy you need in terms of safety system. So all these issues will be examined. And we expect a report by the end of August to look at this escalated nuclear center. Operating plan will try to see how they can, escalate the safety center. Then, of course, projects under construction would have to meet the new standard. So new standard would also be issued by the State Nuclear Safety Board for any future projects that would be submitted for approval. Whether this new set of standard would translate into some amendments of these emergency response communication or zoning provisions, of course, we'll have to wait for a couple more months. So basically, that's my little report on Taipei or China's nuclear accident emergency response plan. Thank you.